Satsang 1. Crystals. April 6, 2019. There, so you remember last month, those who listened, I talked about crystals and their effectiveness. Well, for those who don't know me very well, I've worked with crystals for 25 years, as a doctor and acupuncturist, so I know the effectiveness of crystals well and, oh surprise! Since February, the crystals have changed. In the same way that there are adamantine particles all around us, of course, they're also on the crystals. And I realized, quite by accident, that there was one particular stone in particular, which I had mentioned, which is fullerite, which has absolutely incredible effects. So before, I had developed, at the crystal level, and I will soon be training on crystals again, I had developed a whole framework for the functioning of crystals with classification mode, diagnosis mode, treatment mode, with a very specific reference system, which was quite simply called the colors of minerals, which worked very well. But now, with the number of people who have tried fluorines this month, by putting it anywhere, it works everywhere. It's surprising, but that's the way it is. And I also just realized that in January, I had received a list of crystals that could be used in this particular phase that we are experiencing, and, as if by chance, by reading my sheet that I found, there are many things with fluorines. So, of course I'm going to give you there, you can also ask questions. What I'm going to give you now is a very brief thing, a little half an hour, crystals that can be useful at this time. I'm not talking about therapy, I'm really talking about alignment between being and non-being, if you prefer, or the crossing, as we said, or embracing. All the crystals I am going to give you act on this function, stimulating, of course, things we know. For example, there is a stern protocol that made it possible to activate what was called the descent of the Holy Spirit, that useful rite, which we will find today, because it will promote this alignment at the heart of the heart and therefore, the alchemy between being and non-being and the person, and amplify the process that is naturally underway, I repeat, simply to allow it to flourish in a more sensitive and constant way. So, fullerite, first of all. As I said the other time, whatever its color, whatever its shape. Those who followed the crystals at the time, I remind you that there were different types of fullerite crystals. You have rolled stones, you have pimps, you have cubes, you have ectoderons, you have dodecahedra, you have rhombohedral dodecahedra. There are many natural forms like that, which had specific virtues. For example, the rhombohedral dodecahedron of violet fullerite completely permeated the Marian channel. It was a contact stone with the Marian channel and with Mary. The big pyramid ectoderm was used exclusively to activate the Shathai, or at least in violet, but what I'm saying today is that you can put fullerite anywhere, whatever its shape and color. Besides, it's part of the practical exercises. We brought a lot of fullerite varieties, different colors, different shapes, you'll see. So here, I will specify this in what is at stake at the moment, that is, the passage of Agape's experiences, whether alone or in a group, or in pairs, or in threes, or in full, or spontaneously. The passage, you understood it, it's Agape, okay, Agape resonance, okay, Agape resonance network, okay, but what does it lead to? On this natural state of which I have spoken, that is, the fire of the Sacred Heart, which is permanent when it arrives. There are fluctuations in intensity as the days go by, which you can spot, but it never stops, no matter what you do. And now you are really in the Christic state. This is what was represented in the various iconographies, what is called the glorious heart of Christ, quite simply, which is the true representation of Christ, with his radiant crown, with his 24 rays, as I had explained, which corresponds to the 24 ancients and the 24 tones of what is called the tetrahexadron, which is the heart of eternity. This diamond with 24 triangles, which is the constitution of each heart in the universe of any dimension, still has the same constitution. Of course, you suspect that the protocols I will give you now, you are, of course, not obliged to do or test them, or to buy anything. It's for people who feel like they need this. That being said, it's very pleasant when you have a small health problem of any kind. You remember, before, you had to diagnose the chakras, or locally if you were treated, you had to use stones of a certain color. With full read, you have a Swiss Army knife, I can't say better. You will test it yourself, you'll see. So nevertheless, we will find, in the stones that allow to amplify the moments of agape, whether alone, in pairs, in threes, in groups that will be used, also here, stones that contain lithium. We have seen that fully contains aluminium and lithium and that it occurs, of course. Moreover, we know that lithium acts on the consciousness, since it is given in manic depressive psychoses, to stabilize cell membranes, as if by chance. We talked a lot about cell membranes 2 or 3 years ago, especially for fungi, because you know that today, when we talk about genetics, we know that genetics is absolutely nothing, compared to what we call epigenetics. Until now, we have been sold the model of the evolution of the other English, whose name I forgot, which is completely baroque. The man is descended from the monkey. And until now, even in biology, it has been believed that genetic mutations only occur during evolution, over extremely long periods of time. It has been formally demonstrated, in what is called epigenetics, that DNA is sensitive to the environment. That is, even to the colors of the room, to the music, DNA reacts much more to vibration signals, light, color, sound, than to the body's own chemistry. So epigenetics is something that is developing in a way, but exponentially, in a devastating way, where today, even in the so-called authorized scientific circles, we consider that what is written in DNA is never fixed and that everything depends on environmental factors in the broad sense, not just the environment in the ecological sense. That is to say, it is possible to change the configuration of the DNA and, moreover, the laboratories do not deprive themselves of it. Since 15 years ago, I had worked in Greece, in a biophysical medicine center, and the laboratories were happily validating the frequencies of certain molecules. Because they know very well that chemistry is over, and they know very well that by locking, through patents, frequencies with specific harmonics, they can treat in the same way as with the chemical molecule. And we've known that for 30 years. We simply didn't have the accuracy of today's equipment to determine the overall signal. Today, with certain frequencies, we are able to modify DNA. In the same way, I explained to you that with certain frequencies, with induction coils, you can trigger any mystical state, with stimuli around the head, with magnetic coils. It is an apparatus that exists, so, I have it at home, I make you experience anything. The awakening of the Kundalini, access to the source, access to the absolute, instantly, by stimulating, by placing the coils on some of the stars in the head. Of course, when you stop, it disappears. It's like the history of entheogens, with salvinorin, ayahuasca, iboga and others. You have an experience, you touch something, but you don't stay there. Unlike what happens when it happens from the inside. The crystals now, it's going to be a little bit the same thing. It will bring you closer, if you will, to what is as close as possible to this zero time. These are the protocols I'm deploying to you now. Look, for it, for everything that is the source of daily life. Until now, people have been asking me, or we used to take a black stone for osteoarthritis, for example. It always works very well, but the power of fullerite and the stone called lepidolite, the one I will talk to you about now, which reinforces agape, we used it many years ago, you remember, for the wave of life, at the feet, There, you will place them differently. 2 plates of leopard light, it costs nothing, one on the heart, one on KIRISTI. You're going to harmonize the front, the back. I remind you that it is here that all the energy, all the alchemy, that is happening right now is played out. Of course, I could, as I said last time, explain to you, step by step, all the different structures that are implemented here, at the energetic, vibral, chakra level, whatever you want, it would give you a concept. However, as you can experience directly, the explanation is no longer useful. There you go. So, the explanation, it simply serves me, if you like, not to introduce it to you there, but as there are brothers and sisters, countless now, who discover either, or the channelings, or Agape's experience, and that they arrive and know nothing, it is always useful to have a reference point in the past to explain what is happening to them. For example, you have a lot of brothers and sisters right now who have problems with their vision, with their double vision, with the impression that they don't see clearly, so, of course, with age, when they tell you it's presbyopia, not at all, not at all. Brother K had spoken about it in 2016. He said that at the time of the event, just before, we would be in this state of floating, of unreality. And he explained the modification of the senses and in particular, vision disorders, hearing disorders and brain disorders. That is, the brain understands syllables, but it does not understand words. All this was announced. Of course, I fully understand that compared to some people who are active or who have obligations, it becomes, in some cases, frankly embarrassing, but at some point we will have no choice. But for now we still have a choice. So, what I wanted to say here will allow you to pacify in a general way everything that is happening at the interface between being, self and non-self, and the person. Since now, we all see, even if you say no to me, we all see clearly, even with apprehension, what is of the order of the person, what is of the order of consciousness, what is of the order of mind, what is of the order of emotions. There is no need to have studied, to have understood, spontaneously, you all arrive, through the presence of the observer, more or less to locate yourself with accuracy, since you are the observer of yourself. Before, you didn't see when the mind was there. What did it mean when Grandpa said those who still ride the little bike and everything? It is simply that there was an inability of beings, with the best of wills, except through the vibrational, to distance themselves from their own minds. I am not even talking about identification with the body, so, history, reasoning, habits, well, everything that I am developing at this time. But at the time, we had no way of eliminating that, in quotation marks, or transcending that completely. Today, you do it alone, in everything that happens to you. Even in the most painful or joyful events, you find that, constrained and forced, even if it takes your mind as I tell you, it seems difficult to solve, that the observer is there. And it is the observer who solves, not by action, but by observation, that I have called the first step to embrace. You embrace yourself, in fact. So, the leopard lights, the same, when I talk about stones laid, whether it's fluorine, as you'll do exercises later, when I did therapy sessions, with the stones, I left them in the session for 20 minutes. So that, people, they put the stone, and in 1 minute, the energy has already passed. I can't help it. It really proves that the crystals have also changed in efficiency, in power. This is quite real. It concerns all crystals. So, leopard lights help to strengthen Agape. Now, if you feel that you are not getting enough vibration, for those who perceive the vibrations, there are people who are living the heart now who don't even know what a vibration or an energy is, but for those of us, the elders, who have experienced the energies, the vibrations, for the most part, in some cases, there are vibration rises. an expansion of consciousness that will allow you to come closer to a consciousness, that is, to Alpha and Omega. The continuous expansion, to infinite consciousness, brings back to zero time. The Alpha joins the Omega. As I explained, the Alpha is in the Omega. So, in the maximum expansion of consciousness, what do you come across? On a consciousness. That is to say, that the whole thing joins the nothing. It is illustrated in energy, in your body, in your consciousness, everywhere. This is the end of the myth of creation. Now, when you feel that you have to go into vibration to hang on to what you have observed, that is, the vibrations, agape, silence, the person, his mind, his emotions, his habits, when you start to see all this, and everyone simply sees it, everyone just has to be interested, when you see it, at that moment, you sometimes have the impression that your vibration, what you feel in vibration, whether it is the wave of life or the crowns, is not enough to live agape and even less the sacred fire of the heart. It happens, you go up in vibration and then nothing happens. So, once again, when you are in your natural state, whatever you do, what is there no longer disappears, you remain in glorious body, even if you're angry, even if you want to break everything in you or everywhere, it doesn't change anything, it stays there. It usually calms down very quickly, angry or otherwise. But these vibratory rises can, in some cases, still be significant. So, which ones? You know them, we've talked about them enough, for those who were there before, but I've also talked about them. It's essentially what we call Lima rock crystals or source crystal, which was the alignment stone that we wore, you remember, during the training sessions, in a bag around our neck. And you have, of course, what is called the Corintha. So Corintha is the name of a mine in Brazil. So I tell you the name of the mine, because there are two mines in Brazil that make exceptional crystals, the Corintha mine and the Genipapo mine. If you find crystals that come from Corintha or sister, little ones like that, there are all kinds of them, small, big, pimps, family. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a tip, a pimp or a family, you put it in your hand and that's it. And there, the vibrational level, therefore the spirit consciousness, no matter the hand, there is no laterality. We have worked, for all those who have lived, no, I'll talk about that tomorrow, it's not the opportunity, I'm staying on my crystals. Sister, that crystal there? I will develop it tomorrow. 2 seconds. Over the past 3 months, there has been a kind of internal and external conflict between the male and the female. Sister. Oh yes, that's for sure. Total, it's normal, even if it's not in the couple, it's in itself that it's at stake. If there is no couple, it's in itself. Why? Because when the source codes of the geneticist mothers and Faham were released, there was a resurgence of everything that was not enlightened at the level of wounds, of history, but precisely of the origin of the primary anomaly. The first birth, the first era of separation of the masculine and feminine. As we find the primordial androgynous since the alpha in the omega and the omega in the alpha, end of the myth of creation, you have, yes there is no more left, right. Before, we used to lateralize. When we wanted to increase the energy, for example, if you're right-handed, in the brain called the intuition brain, on the left side, you put a stone on the left side. All the energy will get out of the left side and into the left brain. It's not crossed in terms of energy. It's crossed on a physical level, but not energetic. It means that when you put a stone in your dominant hand you favor the side that corresponded to intuition, quite simply because it is the lateral control brain that corresponds to motor skills. Today, as I told you this morning through gestures, forget about this notion of masculinity and femininity, even if there are still men and women, it means nothing. So all the conflicts that have been awakened, reactivated, that have broken out in your face, inside you, in couples, in male-female relationships, even if it is not a couple, or with the resurgence of the initial trauma, which does not belong to you or to me, but which belongs to all creation. It was necessary to go back to the initial moment of creation, the Alpha, where there was neither male nor female, the primordial androgynous. And as we all know that when we are men we come from Mars, when you are women you come from Venus, on a vibratory level, it is real. Mars and Venus in general don't marry very well together, but now they are getting married. That is, what was missing, the Venus that was missing in man, is present, the Mars that was missing in women, is present. And those who had too much Mars in men, it blew up in their faces. And those who had too many Venus in women, it blew up in their faces. That is to say, logically, in the expression of who you are, the notion of feminine and masculine no longer means anything. In the mockery, it's what transgender is. They are men who dress as women and women who dress as men. They even created the expression, I was appalled, transphobic. That's when you're transgender phobic. Laughs. You know, the sacred and the simulacrum, as I have always said, they are not words I use like that. I don't know why I use them, I have the explanation afterwards. There are words that come like that into my consciousness, I don't even try to understand them. Agape, I tell you, it came like that, but the simulacrum and sacred came like that. I have always said that the simulacrum is part of the sacred. During the 40 days, the sign of Jonah given by Christ, which was lived this year between February 19th and March 30th, in the Sham, what happened? You have a guy who was in the water who was swallowed by a whale and spat out. You saw the video, they showed it everywhere. That's the Sham. He wasn't eaten, he didn't go into the whale's belly. It was swallowed by the whale and spit out while we all lived the 40 days. And in the next 40 days, now with an anamnesius, between March 30th and February, look at what you have experienced, you'll see that it must have been moments of conflict, of resolution too, of understanding. The simulacrum joins the sacred, we join the primordial androgynous, the simulacrum joins the transgender, the abolition of the sexes, the theory of gender. It's exactly backwards, in the same way the law of one is called what in the mockery? United Nations. We call it the AYOUN, in French, but in other countries, no. It's called United Nations, AYOUN. UN is the law of one. That's the Sham. And you will see even in your inner life, in what you have to live, the difference between what was sacred and what was simulacrum, and you will distinguish it how? By Agape and by the fire of the heart. At the time, I remind you that we were talking about the answer from the heart. Grandpa had bothered us with that. Do you feel, to choose one food or another, if there was the answer from the heart? Now the heart is expressing itself. And of course, there is a phase of acclimatization because it does not happen overnight, which has resulted in everything that exploded in your face in understanding as an event, during the 40-day period that has passed. It's over, it ends completely with the new moon. We are entering a new trip, if I can say, at the energetic level, collective, whatever your sign, wherever you are today. So then, what kind of stone do we have that? I close my parenthesis. What are the stones that have functions that will allow us to approach Agape? Well, then. First you have the compassion stone, the hematoid quartz, placed on the heart or anywhere else. Oh, of course, you won't have time, you won't, all afternoon after, practical exercises, I give you a set and you choose. For read, on the other hand, you all try it. Then the alchemy of vibrational fire and vital fire in the heart. The stone is the Kamzit, the pink spoken, and the stone of Teresa, the way of childhood that was on the fold of the groin. I no longer know on which side. I forgot the names. I can't even remember where it is, at the fold of the groin on the left or on the right. Then another stone that is used a lot for sleep, to calm the mind until now, which will harmonize the vibrational flow with spirit consciousness. Pink quartz on the heart or anywhere. Another stone I would like to talk about here, in these stones that correspond to the heart, which is a little different from kamzit. You have two other stones by the way, one that comes closer to igneous fire, the closest to igneous fire. It is the crystallized rotatrosit. It is the stone of the chakra of the soul. You remember, it was on the outdoor. It was also the stone of the kundalini, the so-called crystallized rotatrosit. The non-crystallized it acts more on osteopathy, the heartaches. Another interesting stone to promote or facilitate the alchemy that takes place there in the middle of the chest between the organ heart, the person's therefore the organ heart, the vibrational heart and the heart of the heart, that is, the three components. You will use a stone that was used on the other side, at the time, on the unity door, which is the ghost quartz, on the heart or anywhere. So one that's very important, but now it's happening on its own. When I wrote that in January, well, we didn't get, it is the fusion of heart and head, of course. Good, we have the gestures and there it is awfully simple. You take two fluorines, whatever the color, whatever the shape, you place one on the head and one on the heart, and there, the chemistry of the head and heart, what we called at the time, the sacred luminousate. All this will somehow promote the emergence of both Agape, for those who do not live it, and especially the sacred fire of the heart. I had another one to give you, so, always useful at this moment for those who live nothing, feel nothing. What are we going to do? We will encourage the descent of the light. This is the protocol that had been called Shathai, which I have used for decades to open the upper chakras, which consists of placing an octaedral fulgurate on the seventh chakra, one in each hand, regardless of size. So before, I would have told you, purple rather than blue. But you're going to see, with green, colorless, or any color, that it works the same way, and even if it's not octaedral, it also works, well. But at the beginning, it was fulgurate ectodron, that you put under the head. You put the head back, it's not a precise point, it'll be behind, it will diffuse, and one in each hand. And at the same time, a Herkimer diamond on the forehead and under the feet, under the heels. That's not for you who are there. I speak if you have people around you, you tell them about Agape, but we can't force people, but telling them to put crystals, it can interest them. It'll be a surprise if they put these two crystals in. Sister, the Herkimer here and... No. This is not the Shathai protocol. I gave two protocols, the descent of the Holy Spirit, which now is the descent of the light, the ectodrons of fulgurate 7th chakra hand and diamond of Herkimer 6th chakra, feet. Sister, that's what I'm telling you. I now move on to another one, the heart's head fusion, which does the work that we do with the osteo, on the skull, but with the crystals. In a way, you'll see, particular, if you test them. It will consist in putting an ectodron, a priori, of fulgurate, but you can also put a rolled stone, behind and in the middle on the heart and two ectodron of fulgurate, and that's all, and you stay a moment like that, lying down. Remember that when you use the crystals, except when they are placed for pain, you tape them down. The ideal thing is still to stay still, with your eyes closed. It's very important, because if you have your eyes open, your brain stays in alpha rhythm and the crystal will be less effective. It is not the same for locally laid stones. Sister, do we have to clean the stones? I'm coming to that. The crystals until now, everything that was a process of meditation, of expansion of consciousness, did not need to be cleaned, as had already been said. Sister, for the care. For the care, yes. Today, what is happening? I tried as I was doing my experiments. I was showing the clan to stress a crystal by sending stress. It no longer works. That is to say, the crystal, a priori, can no longer be negatively charged, nor with anything else. Brother, I took a little in the hand and now I remind you that the purification of crystals, for those who want to purify the stones, of course, you'll see that there are lots of books that have been written about it, with a little something, the way faster. You see heaven and earth, you don't need to visualize anything, you say I am connected to heaven and earth, you take a stone in your hand, and by saying that, it is purified. Considering what I just told you just before, it's that you can't charge a crystal anymore. Why? I don't know. I don't have a clan machine to record the crystals right now. At the time, absolutely incredible photos were taken of what was happening by remotely loading the crystals. I had my partner who was at the firm with clan pictures of the stone. I was 40 kilometers away. I knew my stones. They are my stones with which I healed. He said, "Can you load me with this stone?" I did what I wanted on the stone from a distance. I could stress her out, increase her radiance and everything. Today, this no longer seems possible. That is, a crystal emits what it is, without receiving anything from the outside. Sister, there's no point in putting it in an amethyst head. Yes, it behaves like lead, exactly. Sister, but if we put the crystals in them? Yes, just like before. You know the amethyst heads, whatever the size, it's the only stone that doesn't accept what you send it, it systematically returns it to you. Well, all crystals seem to work that way. This was a very recent observation. Because there I was thinking about my crystal training, I had left on what I had been doing for years. The first experience is to hold the crystal in your hand, without knowing what it is, see what you feel and then charge it yourself, unload it yourself, or stress another crystal that someone brings back. This won't work anymore. Crystals have become something else. So, you know, what? Sister, would this be related to the primary anomaly that was saved? Last year, I didn't notice it even when the primary anomaly disappeared. I've since noticed it. Before, you have to be honest, before the whales, no, in January I had already talked about it, before the source code. Already in January, I noticed that very special things were happening with the crystals, with all the crystals. Sister, with the codes of genetic mothers then? This may be a consequence, but I would say that it is directly the density of light that is simply present now. In Atlantis crystals were widely used, moreover, rather misused. The crystals were much more powerful in Atlantis than they were now. I've been using them for 30 years and now they find that vibration again. As if the crystals were rectified in alignment with the light as we are. They are no longer on the falsified axis, but they are on the authentic axis, and therefore they emit energies that have nothing to do with it. Paradox. They can no longer be programmed, loaded or cleaned. They apparently remain intact at all times. You remember for the old those who had seen the clean photos, I showed the energy fields of the crystals with the stress around them. Today it is to be checked, but to the feeling in any case, it is clear. The crystals you can no longer put shit in, energy in, they act on their own. Sister, and those who already had some that had been programmed negatively, did it go away on its own? I don't know, I'd still have to have one on hand. We can't program them anymore, I think we're on. So we'll keep going. I only have 2 more protocols to give you. One that is important. You know, for those who perceive the energies, there is a lot of work that has been done in the junction of the 3 levels between the head, the heart and the sacrum at the back, for those who have felt the energy flows at that level. Of course, here you have two stones that will allow you to harmonize the F channel, or the Kundalini, formerly called, as you wish. It is the median channel of the spine. By placing there two, a full rate on the head and a crystallized rhodotrosit on the sacrum. Last protocol, I don't want to overload you without it, I couldn't, which had been explained at the end of the celestial wedding by Michael on the new Eucharist, that is, the fusion of soul, spirit and body, the new triunity. Obviously, it's the same process as at the time, but on a much broader level, we'll say. We've done several cycles. And there you'll place the three stones that correspond on the triangle that is there. I remind you, a ruby on the chakra of the heart in the center, on the chakra of the soul above the right breast, a rhodotrosit, and above the left breast. I remind you, for those who do not know, because everyone knows, you take your ideal nipple in a man, you put a crosspiece of hands in the second costal space above the nipple, where you have the chakra of the soul and spirit. It is this area, it is not millimeter, it is the whole area acts at this level. And so you will place on the right a crystallized rhodotrosit and on the left a ghost quartz. By placing these three stones there, you will promote alchemy between the organ heart, the heart of eternity, and the heart of the heart, the being, the non-being, and the person. Sister, can you repeat the stones? The ruby in the center of the heart chakra, which is the leading stone of the heart chakra, spirit chakra above the right breast, crystallized rhodotrosit, and left, ghost quartz. Sister, memory, isn't that something for memory? The memory, it will disappear completely. You can't memorize that. I really invite you to reread Brother K at December 2017, you will understand. He explained what is happening now. Brother Gene, look, last time you spoke with 3 fluorines, a protocol where they were put, why was that also? You can do it too. What's going on? What I explained, on the lateral zones of the neck, is the whole limbal system. All emotions are sent in frequency through this medium. It is all that we call the cranial parasympathetic. The lateral zones of the neck send, the brain controls the body through a frequent and non-chemical feedback system where the brain constantly sends frequencies that are relayed by the lateral zones of the neck. Parasympathetic cranial zones that are extremely important for all that is the articulation between emotions, the mind and a person. Of course, when you put stones here, you will regulate with the heart and you will limit the influence of emotions, but you will also harmonize the system called brain feedback. The brain spends its time sending frequencies. It does not send chemical molecules, it does not send nerve impulses, it sends frequencies. These frequencies, they are between 48 kHz and 700 kHz. I had already had the opportunity many years ago to explain this. 48 kHz is what? It is the rock crystal, the base of time, of the cell. It is silica that provides the basis of time to the cell. I remind you that the cell does not evolve in the same space-time as us. It is surprising to say, but a cell does not evolve at all in the same space-time. For its time, a chemical reaction, for example, the cell is able to make nuclear chemistry reactions, rising to thousands of degrees, but for a time of about 10 powers minus 19 seconds. The cell, each of our cells, does not live in the same space-time as us. That's proven. And why am I talking about the cell? What were we talking about? Oh yes, the lateral zones of the neck. Indeed, you're here on the limbal system, you're on all the regulation between emotions and the brain and the corresponding organs. The so-called target organs. For example, I take 48, 700 kHz, I take any frequency, 168 kHz, the liver, for example, has a frequency that is its own, 168 kHz, the whole organ is at 168 kHz. the brain, it sends 168 kHz. If it does not receive 168 kHz, it excludes the liver. At that time, cancer. That's how cancer is born. It totally joins all of Dr. Hem's medicine on the brain and body territories. So, when you use fluorine, for example, here, you will not only harmonize emotions, but you will also regulate the exchange between the heart and the head. But this time, however, not heart-to-head fusion, as we saw in one of the previous protocols, but at the organic level. That is, today, for the past 2 months theoretically, I don't have enough patients to treat with crystals. Now I tell people, put this stone, I don't even take care of it anymore. I don't have a practice, so I can't have people on hand to control it, but it's obvious that fluorines. I'm not even talking about crystal protocols on the chakras anymore. These fluorines will be able to trigger miracles in the bodies. Because it is the highest frequency of the crystals. It is 685 kHz, it is the highest frequency that the brain can pick up and that the body can pick up too. From the moment you deliver this frequency with the geometric model of Fullerite, which is a crystallization system, called cubic. This is very important. Cubic means that you have 3 axes, in the 3 directions of space, which have the same length and the same angle of 90 degrees, which is called. Diamond is a cubic crystallization system, for example. Quartz is what we call rhombohedral. It is angles of 30 degrees and 60 degrees and so on. No matter what, it is a classification, but Fullerite, whatever its color, because color is only a function of the deposit where it is found, i.e. the impurities that are there. You know that the difference between ruby and sapphire is just a chromium atom. In one case, there is chromium, in the other case there is no chromium. Otherwise it is the same, sapphire corundum, ruby corundum, it is the same stone, yet sapphire is much more expensive. There is just one atom of chromium, which during the genesis of the stone has transformed the stone into blue. One atom, you see. Now, this notion of color, of chemical composition, seems to me to be relegated to the background compared to what crystals do now. But I don't have enough experience to give you the exact rules. I just noticed that it is like that. This means that fluorine, which contains fluorine, lithium, many minerals, especially lithium, which is a stabilizer of cell membranes, and cancer is always caused by an electromagnetic anomaly. Whether you call it emotion, whether you call it a pesticide or whatever, it is the frequency that is altered in that brain. That's what they did with aluminum. They have put it everywhere. Alzheimer, Parkinson's, and nanoparticles, especially titanium dioxide, which aims to come into the brain and block brain frequencies, and thus block consciousness. It is done knowingly, as in toothpastes, all toothpastes, even bio. That's why now, for those who really want to be careful about that, even if love is stronger than anything, they make their own toothpaste, because all toothpastes contain titanium oxide. Sister, very simple, I can give you the recipe if you want. Well, duh, I don't know. Sister, well, duh, no, normally it doesn't have one. They say no. Sister, they say no. They say no, but between what they say and reality, I'm not sure. Brother, if I understood the Fullerite protocol on the side correctly, it implies that just now it's not even worth it to. Brother, the physical. Sister, you said on the forehead too. On the heart. Brother, if the third one is put elsewhere. On the heart. Brother, the heart is put elsewhere. It is not worth it from the moment that Fullerite is the highest frequency. If you put it on the brain's catchment area, which is not the chakra but the lateral areas of the neck, you put it here, you tape it, and you will regulate all the frequencies that are emitted by the brain that controls the body. That is, you'll solve all the problems of exclusion from him's territorial conflict, without putting an ice bladder on your head or high-dose cortisone to solve the conflict. So when I say that full RIT is something miraculous, I can't prove it, but the first things I saw about it are absolutely incredible. Sister, I can give a testimony. Brother, I did a full RIT test by putting one on the forehead and both of them there. Yes. Brother, from the first time, I have memories that came out. Yes. Brother, an absolute conscience, a whole sequence of memories that have been chained together until the resolution of what? And when I saw it, I put myself in the embrace at the same time and... Yes, yes. Brother, it came out. That's right, that's right. Sister, and full RIT whatever the form? Anyone? Brother, yes, yes, anyone, there, old, and 2 ectodrons here. Well, that's because that's all I had. Any form of full RIT will work, I can guarantee it. In other words, what I'm telling you today is that a priori with fluorines, so not necessarily there, because there, it's very precise on the lateral areas, because the signal is picked up even in the hand and at the tip of the foot, it's going to be more effective there. Still, I'm not even sure. Until now, it was necessary to put the stones on the chakras, in very precise triangulation. Everything I have been carrying for 25 years is completely modified by what is happening now. So, full RIT, I remind you, though, that full RIT is the most widely used stone in the industry. It is so rich in minerals, and what do? They melt it in the industry to simply recover the minerals. But here you have the crystalline arrangement of these different minerals. Aluminium. So the aluminum that you will put in the water and you absorb with the pots and pans and everything, it settles in the brain, it's not good. But the vibration of aluminum is sacred. We're no longer in the sham. Sister, it means that we could, for example, put a full RIT in, I purify the water with. You can purify the water with many stones. Sister, for gravitation, if you want. With a quartz, with any stone. It was used in ancient times, we always put a crystal at the bottom of a jar. Sister, yes, and full RIT so? Full RIT may be indicated. Be careful because there are stones that melt in the water, full RIT does not melt. You have some stones that are soluble in water. It's a little embarrassing. Sister, then we swallow them. Laughs. I remember people who had bought, we were talking about the dolomachosites. It costs a fortune of the beautiful dolomachosites, who wanted to purify them in water. Laughs. The next morning, there was sand on the bottom. Brother, the moonstones too. But full RIT, no, there's no problem. There is still now when I say purified, see, that what I say. It no longer means anything, what? So, work anyway as a precaution, if I can say so, but it's no use anymore. When I get the clan, if I get the chance to get a clan to take pictures of the crystals, it will appear right away. Brother, did you say the vibration of aluminum is sacred? Can you explain? Yes, in Mendel's classification, you have the mineral. In the mineral kingdom, if we talk about the constituent atoms when you look at the layers, excuse us, it's scientific, between doctors. Sister, no, but it's still interesting. You have the electronic layers. We know, for example, that between silica and carbon, there is only one electron of difference, or two, I don't remember, one or two, on the peripheral layer, it's nothing at all. Brother. Yes. However, the electric bombardment that we are currently undergoing, both electromagnetic and cosmic, by gamma radiation, I would like to point out that we have been flooded with cosmic and gamma rays for many months, but now it is reaching levels that you can't even imagine. They are perfectly aware of this, because they know that this is what will put an end to the system. Moreover, you can see the multiplication of electromagnetic impulses. Cars that spontaneously catch fire, factories that catch fire, planes that crash, cars that explode or no longer open, from all over the world, pipelines that explode from everywhere. Why? Why? It's very simple. You have flows, coils, for example, starter coils and electronics, it accumulates static electricity. There, the ionosphere is completely perforated, the electrical charges that are present on Earth. I remind you that normally the surface of the ground is negatively charged everywhere on Earth. That's it, that's it. And besides, all the climatic anomalies, of course, I linked to Napier, I linked to the dead stars that are absorbing our solar system. It's real what I'm telling you, dead stars, they're in our solar system, they're not black holes, they're dead stars that absorb the world. Brother, a nucleus of stars. The sun is being reabsorbed. You know very well that there is no more sun in the sky. What we see is that we call the sound simulator, are satellites that are placed in a stationary orbit on what are called Lagrange peaks that always remain at the same place at the interface, at the balance between the forces of the sun and the forces of the earth, and they're equipped. Brother, it still seems a little bit to give you the illusion of the sun's radiation is there, but I remind you anyway, of what the sun was made of our bodies of eternity. 45.40 You remember at that time those who went into the sun what we see up there, the sun is our body of eternity. If the bodies of eternity are all present here, it is where the sun is. Sister. That's why. There's just the sun's portal left. Sister. The brightness of the sun has changed. The sun is being eaten. Sister. He's white now. It is much whiter, but this is not only related to a change in color, it is related to the increasing scarcity of the upper atmosphere, what is called the troposphere or tropos. I don't know anymore. There are several layers that have specific names that filter some radiation and not others. You'll see it is visible more and more: pink sky, red sky, purple sky, even in the middle of the night. Hail phenomena, because there are hail tsunamis there now. They've invented a new word, a hail tsunami, everywhere on the 5 continents at this very moment. It is related to what is happening up there in the ionosphere. The electrical charges are changing. Moreover, the hail is no longer round, the hail is speculated now. It's totally weapons. There are plenty of peaks everywhere. The last ones in Iran aren't even peaks, they're just like sickle species. You see the ice crystals. How does ice form? Brother, you were on aluminium. And aluminium, lithium. Laughs. And aluminium in relation to carbon and silica is the same thing. The aluminum metal deposits in the body, it intoxicates, a poison at the sacred level. That vibration of the aluminum, not the metal ingested, but what is present in the crystal, is something that expands consciousness. Whereas if you use aluminum material, you remember when you had too much headache, you would put an aluminum cap on your head to cut off the energy flow. And it's always like that. I gave you the example of the United Nations, the law of AYOUN, the theory of gender, the primordial androgynous theory. You'll see in your life and in everything you have to see and observe wherever you look this simultaneity of the two things. What is of the order of the simulacrum? What is of the sacred order? It is the antithesis. I took the example from you, and for metals it is the same thing. Lithium in medical doses is a membrane stabilizer in certain known diseases that is used. Lithium is used in what? Everywhere today. Sister. The batteries. In the simulacrum. Sister. Mobile phones. In the cells, the batteries. Brother. Batteries. Sister. Yes, the batteries. Well, lithium in the body is the battery in your cell membrane. If you stabilize your cell membrane, then 3 years ago there was a lot of talk about fungi and the formation of cell membranes. To stabilize this cell membrane, fluoride and aluminum, because there is aluminum fluoride, lithium. All these metals, if you will, there is not only aluminium, lithium, there are others. I do not have all the names in mind. At the vibratory level, not at the molecular level, but at the vibral level, are extremely important signatures. The whole constitution of the human being, or of any form, in any world, in any dimension, is based on what are called matrices. Matrices are crystalline codes. These crystalline matrices are world organizers, what is called the civilization of triangles, which are located very high beyond anthropomorphism, and today you can use anything in the simulacrum or in the sacred. So I can't develop you anymore on aluminium. What I just know is that aluminium at a good weight dose, we know what it triggers in the body, but aluminium, the frequency of aluminium, is something that is very harmonizing like lithium. But the difference between lithium and aluminum is that lithium is used in medicine. I don't think that aluminium can be used in medicine, and so can fluorides. For example, fluoride, you know what it does to teeth, to consciousness, to the epiphysis. Well, yes, but fluoride contains fluorine. The effect is totally the opposite. It is exactly the opposite. It is the opening, while fluorine mineral is closing, can fossilize the epiphysis, it crystallizes it. So of course, when I see people, at the time I was talking about Zlith, for example, which allows you to decalcify the pineal, but you have people who have a lot of techniques to decalcify the pineal. Don't bother with that today. Put a fluoride, you will simply remove the effect of fluoride in your epiphysis. Sister. We put her on her forehead there. Certainly, you can keep it at bay. The information will pass, but you can be as close as possible indeed, 6th or 7th chakra. I would even say to be as close as possible to the epiphysis. It's not going to be the 7th chakra. The 7th chakra is the center. It's going to be one of the 4 Hakadesh, not the one at the back, because it's dependent on the earth, that is, the memory of the earth, the cerebellum, the one in front. That is to say, you have the beta day, that 20 Vg at the top of the skull, the fontanelle, the center of the 7th chakra, the great crown of the head, and you have the small crown of the head, which is the image of the heart up there that was blocked until now. And then you have the Hakadesh fire, 2 finger cross pieces on the highest point of the posterior fontanelle of the 20 Vg, 20th point of the governing vessel. You have the Hakadesh fire vehua, which corresponds to fluoride. So the fluoride, if you place it on the epiphysis, you put it there. If you want to be very sharp, you put it 2 fingertips in front of the 7th, but the energy at the stone spreads so much everywhere. That's why I tell you that you put it anywhere, it will work. Today try to experiment to see the difference between, for example, for fluoride, of which we were talking, the 2 stones placed there with one there, and one there, and only one in the hand. You will see that it will be essentially the same thing. Not on the feeling of the moment perhaps, but in terms of efficiency it will be the same thing. Brother, you were talking about aluminium. It was used in oligotherapy, i.e. at doses below 1 milligram. That's right. Brother, to promote sleep. To promote the brother, sleep. Yes, that's right. It is a stabilizer of not membrane activity, but rather axonal and dendritic activity. Aluminium is deposited in the brain, it triggers Alzheimer, Parkinson's, finally all its crap. Aluminium, I remind you that even if you eat organic you cook well in pans. Brother. No, that's it. Some of them bought some stone stuff, the Bohrumstal. Brother. It's stainless steel. But you should know that when you cook in containers, you swallow aluminum with every meal. So it's all very well to eat organic, but if you cook it in a pan with the coating, it's over. You have 10 times the dose you have in vegetables with pesticides. Brother. The Teflons. I'm sorry, today, they did everything they could about organic farming to transform things. And indeed aluminium in very, very low doses was given as a trace element to stabilize sleep. Not for sleeplessness if my memories are good for waking up. Brother. I don't remember. I don't remember, it's old, I don't remember it either. Lithium is widely used in medicine in very serious diseases in so-called manic depressive psychosis as a stabilizer of cell membranes. But once again the vibratory aspect is much clearer than the chemical aspect. These are the stone protocols I wanted to give you. It is not a question here of repeating a course on crystals unless you have questions, but independently of the registration. So all the protocols I gave you retain the full writ and then have fun. Now it's 4 o'clock, until the break, that is, until 5.5 hours. You have an hour and a half to test the protocols. So I repeat the simplest protocols full writ wherever you want, any shape, any color, any size, wherever you want. Sister. Quite easy, yes. I'll tell you again. The crystals that favor Agape. Lipid light, 1 on the heart, 1 on KRISTI 5th dorsal behind. Vibratory rise allowing the spirit consciousness to approach Agape. Lima or Corinth wherever you want, in hand in general. For the 4th Keka all the alchemy that happens here, it is there where I gave the most stones. Of course, it is the most important. First of all, you have the hematoid quartz stone of compassion and ultimate emotion, that is, I am you, you are me. The kunzith which makes the link between the vibrational fire, the vital fire and the igneous fire, which will be a little more specified at the level of vibrational fire by the kunzith and a little more by the igneous fire by the rhodotrosite on the heart or in the hand. So there are 3 stones to promote alchemy to be, not to be, no one who can place themselves on the heart, in hand either ghost quartz, kunzith, or rhodotrosite, and I also talked about the vibrational flow which was pink quartz. Then I simply mentioned head/core fusion, it's always head full writ and a teetral hard full writ or not. I talked again about the Shafi protocol you have in that book. Have the 3 hexagrams of full writs head/hand diamond of Herking Reforad. Anyway, we're going down together to the crystals to see what you want to do, so I'll be with you. Harmonization of the ether channel for all those who had felt left/right imbalances in either the legs or back, in the pain level even on one side and not on the other. It is necessary to equivalence on the central axis. It is useless to say as I said before. It is on the right, therefore it is such a kekara, below on the right 2nd kekara, above on the right 5th kekara. It is finished all that. I'm radical, but that's how I can't help it. I comply with what's going on. So in all this work of unification, if we can say between ultimate polarities, as we said earlier, masculine/feminine, it is reunification through the channel of the ether, the Sushumna if you prefer, which has been covered with light between the sacrum KIRISTI and the triangle of earth that is behind the head. Those who perceive the energies felt that it was working very hard on these areas. Moreover, you could feel imbalances in the pelvis or shoulders. It depends on the level at which it touches between the left and the right. but to bring together the left and the right. We have seen it, we have crossed our feet, we have seen it this morning. You're reuniting the ultimate polarities, what is called the masculine and the feminine, which is creation. The dream of creation could only take place because there were the centers of polarity. The first polarity expressed, manifested from the very first dream of creating geneticists, mothers and whales. It was the same, was the tear between the masculine and the feminine. This is what I called in February after the release of the whale source codes, what I called the first birth. This is the moment when the alpha joins the omega, or, as I said, the omega becomes the alpha. Brother, for proprioceptive foot disorders there is nothing to do. What? Brother, for proprioceptive foot disorders there is nothing to do. The proprioceptive disorders in the feet, I know yesterday I had paralysis of the right leg. It was related to the will, my will when I fought with Baidu, to get out of the body to go see, do not go see, since I did not listen while I paralyzed my leg. It's a left/right anomaly. Brother, this is the two paralyzed ribs. What happened then? My masculine will on the right side to get out of my body, to see what was happening, to treat the cause a loss. After when I understood it, it quickly recovered, there was nothing left, but that's exactly what happened. I deliberately unbalanced at that time, because there was a job to do, masculine and feminine. Today, since February, the period of masculine/feminine confrontation not only in couples, inside oneself in masculine/feminine relationships of any kind has been very violent. Brother, when are the two sides the same? What? Brother, when are the two sides the same? Proprioceptives of both feet. That's not the same thing. The proprioception of both feet is currently linked to what were called at the time the ankle bracelets that simply put you on the ground. Now the loss of proprioception, it evolves. Me, I have more proprioception in my hands. Some days ago, I promise you, I feel like I have paralytic hands. I see it well because when I roll cigarettes or do something thin, I don't tremble. However, I don't have any anomaly, and well, I have the impression that proprioception is no longer there. We disappear from the periphery, but what Brother K had said is exactly what is happening. Brother, so there is nothing to do. You will lose the sensitivity of your feet, you will lose the sensitivity of your hands, you will lose all sensitivity until you no longer get up. I can't help it, it's the normal process. Indeed, there is no treatment there. You can try to reunify. In my terminology, before reaching both feet corresponds to the first bilateral chakra, but you can put all the black tourmaline you want. You can even put tourmaline called great cat's eye, which is specific to neurological disorders of in the uritis and loss of sensitivity of proprioception. I guarantee you, I don't think it works. And this loss of proprioception is not paralysis. Brother, no. It has nothing to do with it. You have the impression that you no longer control, that you no longer know the proprioception of what is called in medical terms when I use my hands on certain days, I roll a cigarette. Laughs. I feel like I'm someone who's full of osteoarthritis, who can't move when I'm flexible. Now with what's happened, I have no problem, but there's no control. Brother, yes, then a lack of stability. And yes, but wait for the dizziness everyone has. Brother, no, it lacks contact stability. That's what it's for. The embarrassing episodes. We have a friend who ended up in the hospital for 3 days, because he had a diplopia. So when you're a doctor you know that when you have a diplopia that suddenly appears you see double, you have to do a CT anyway. That's what happened. The emergency scanning and everything, there's nothing. The dystopia of blurred and double vision has been described by Brother K in the process we are now experiencing. Sister, the rest, than a stone when you can't see as well. I have recently had blurred vision in one eye. Wait, but now I'm sending you back to the brochure, that's on a medical level. At the time I had listed a certain number of pathologies on which the crystals acted, not all of them but some of them act very well, but now we are entering the medical field, but the loss of proprioception, at some point, and that is the stasis, you will be lucid and conscious, your body will no longer be able to move, before disappearing in the wide paradise. Sister, that's like when you bump into a door, for example, you know, you walk through a door, I don't know, you bang yourself. Yes. Sister, you knock on doors. This is what we call the body schema. Integration of the body schema. Sister, yes. There is a very poor of the body schema. Sister, because then there. But. Laughs. You feel like you're walking through the middle of the door and you're actually on the left side and you knock, it's part of the same process. Some people who have this from birth know it is very good. Laughs. But it is a process that is becoming more widespread. Sister, it is a good sign, it is a good sign. And fortunately there is joy that is there, because even now people who were nothing for his problem of dystopia, fortunately that there is joy. Because despite the resuscitation, it was definitely the vital emergency, and after 2 days there is nothing at all. But how many of them are like that? Things. Sister, the fact of, how to say, missing a step, actually falling, missing an obstacle. It's the same thing. It does it to me systematically when I go up to the mezzanine, I miss a step. I set foot where there is nothing. Sister, yes, it's crazy this thing. But that's normal too. Sister, well said, of which and how fortunately you say there is laughter behind it, because that's how it works when I say we're going to dive laughter. We're going to dive laughter, but to die there must be a disease or something that stops, it won't change the joy. We're going to die life, actually there's no more death. We leave, it's like you leave, like those who leave their bodies at will, it's like you leave a corpse. When I get into the body, I feel like it's a corpse. Real life is not in this body. And that's what's happening. That is to say, everything, that's what's surprising, because there are miracles that happen, there are very serious diseases that heal like that. Fingers snap. And at the same time you have people discovering lots of new symptoms that have nothing to do with each other anymore. But the real diseases, they disappear. Brother, didn't you notice that there are no more chemtrails at the moment? There is no more. Brother, from chemtrails, the chemtrails. There are periods of downtime, not always. Brother, because right now I've been seeing more of them for a while. Yes, they're right in the middle of big cities, yes, but they are less widespread. It is true that there are times when there are none, it is true. There were a few days when we had no shirts, none. But I suppose that the conditions are few, like with all the planes that have crashed recently, that the engine fires up there is such an electronic flow of electrons, the gradients between the ionosphere and the Earth, with cosmic rays, the alchemy of cosmic rays, that nothing works as before the planes. And we don't work the way we used to, so you'll have to get used to it. Look, for example, when I talk about nutrition, when I said everything, that as you remember that the seat at the neuroscientific level to believe you a person, separated, limited by a body, have a history, and everything is only induced by the thalamus. As I explained at the time with products, we are able to completely block these receptors of identity, particularly with salvinorin, salvia divina moribunda, and then there is no one left, you are no longer a person. The idea of being a person separated from another person or life is only created and was created by the primary anomaly that is the confinement of the central nuclei of the thalamus, that's all. That's all there was to it. So obviously all the rhythms related to the hypothalamus pituitary gland and the notion of believing oneself an individual, the central regulation of hunger, thirst, sleep, temperature, no longer works. You see, hot and cold periods are food. I am the food because there is no longer any need to eat. Don't do that. I didn't force myself not to eat. I am a ben vivant, that's how it is. I can't do otherwise. We're really fed by something else and we are not fed by skunk. It is not skunk that feeds. I don't do any pranics or breathing exercises or anything. It is the light that is there. From the moment you broke the idea of being a person, and it is a neuroscientific process that happens in your thalamus, hypothalamus and thalamus, as soon as it is broken there you are in joy. It is mandatory, that's what we call the fire of the sacred heart that manifests itself there. It's the end of the predation of your own brain on yourself, the end of habits, the end of behaviors, the end of rules, the end of morals, the idea of believing that you must eat at such and such a time to be well, the idea of believing that you have to go to bed to sleep because it's night, the idea that you have to eat 3 meals to be healthy, the idea that you slept 10 hours now you sleep 20 hours or even more, before you were hot, now you are always cold. And proprioception is also involved in this through certain neural networks, of course, since it is the reptilian brain that controls all automatisms, and it is it that gives you the sense of being an identity. You know that in the United States they are very far from research with salvinorin. I talked about DMT, DMA, DMT, which are considered drugs, and in particular, well, salvinorin, salvia, which is the sage of soothsayers. At the time they had not yet done the experiments, they had already done it with DMT. You know that with an intravenous injection of DMT, you can never be depressed again in your life, and it is proven by pharmacologists. They've had enough experience in the United States. In Australia, yes, then the problem they have as a natural molecule, they can't patent it. The DMT crystal or salvia divina that he is now beginning to test definitively puts an end to any mood inversion. It is something that happens in the brain that is real. Even when we were talking about the awakening of the Kundalini that you feel in that place for those who have experienced Kundalini awakenings, but it doesn't happen here, it happens in the brain first on the stars Hic and Nux. The awakening of the Kundalini is only a neurophysiological process that is illustrated in the body, that's all. The 7 chakras are located on the body, but the 7 chakras, they are in the brain, they are between the starodi and the top of the skull. You have 7 depressions that are opposite the cerebellum. For the first 3 chakras seat, memory as if by chance, and spatial and temporal orientation part of the upper part of the cerebellum corresponds to the 3 top chakras. All this is perfectly coherent. The body is only a matrix, it's an illusion. I'm not even talking about the identity of the person there, but all of this goes together is all that's happening right now, and it's happening in our lives, which means that as people see it, even if there are very serious diseases that heal instantly or people are dying, they keep smiling, because what we called the myth of immortality, to believe that we believe ourselves to be an individual, or to believe that we are a succession of beings in incarnation through karma, no longer exist. All this is a lie. All this is a lie. All this is a concept. It is very false, and it is what is happening in our brain, in our heart too. You think that when I talk about the rhythm of 3 beats, obviously it's not boom, boom, of the heart that's going to go boom, 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 although in some cases there are those who are living it, You doubt that these changes in heart or respiratory perceptions that occur at a different rate will be felt in the body if we stay long enough to see it on the electrocardiograms. We will see it on the breathing measures. We will see it everywhere. Ear whistling, for example, what was called the singing of the soul, the nada. But you think that the ends have noticed that there are more and more people who have ear whistling. These people who have these whistles don't know what it is until they open their hearts, until they open spontaneously. So you have people hanging around with a lot of symptoms. Look at this friend and the sensory disturbances, tact, taste, smell, hearing, sight, will be turned upside down. You can't even imagine that this is just the beginning. Look at the tastes. What you liked the day before, you don't like it anymore. Is it true or not? In terms of food, for those who still eat, or you don't care at all, that is to say you can swallow any food without paying attention, but everything that is related to the senses, that is to say really the senses in the sensory sense. I'm not talking about feeling, I'm talking about the senses of the 5 senses. In fact, we don't have 5 senses, we have 8 senses in the human being. We have studied only the first 5. You have an electric sense, a magnetic sense and an electromagnetic sense that are present as if by chance on the stars. Here it is the magnetic crystals that you have in your elbows and you have in your knees, and those are completely there. Do the yo-yo-yo, which explains that the proprioception, the temporal spatial location of your body no longer exists, and that on the other hand, even if you're in very good health, that there are diseases that cure, you can only see it. The event, if you want, is triggered at the individual level. At the collective level, nobody knows how many weeks it will last, since it can happen at any time. Now it's obvious I'm not even talking about Canis or intuition, is talking about benchmarks, all the more objective in the activity of the earth. I'm not even talking about the ionosphere, I'm talking about the activity of volcanoes, the movements of tectonic plates, the climatic imbalances that have nothing to do with humans but only with Nipia. All this, you live it, is on all continents. It is also lived in our body, and it is very well done. It is very well done, because we realize that even brothers and sisters who have very rare diseases, who live the fire of the heart, even if the body consciousness, which still a few months, I said I had to be at rest to avoid precisely limiting the proprioception to be available. Today the light no longer gives a shit. You can do 100 meters, you can run, you can move, it will always be there. As I said, it is inevitable, not only inevitable, but more than obvious now. Well, maybe it's time I stopped talking and you did your exercises, otherwise I'm not going to stop. Then I'll go down with you anyway down there. I remind you that LD makes her crystals available. Yes, you wanted to ask a question. Sister, I just wanted to say something. When I exercised full RIT at night, I didn't sleep at night. Yes. Sister, so I don't really want to do it now. Yes. Brother, it is not evening. You know, I can't listen to myself for 2 minutes. If I listen to myself for 2 minutes, I'll sleep right away, I promise. I can't listen to any canalization again. Now I take 2 seconds, I literally fall. That's how it is, the vibrational aspect. So, I'm going to go down. So, yes, I was saying for the crystals you don't do all the protocols. You don't have time, you have what to do 2 or 3 protocols if you want there. You take the stones that match. LD, do you want them to give them back to you? How after? If there are some you want to keep, you keep them with you. You'll see the accounts with LD at the end of the workshop on Sunday at 5 p.m. If you want to return them, she will put a basket for you. That's what you will do to make them there. Yes, we will put one. You will bring the stones back into this container, or into the basket that we will put there. LD will put them away after, and there we will descend all together to the crystals. Then you'll bring the crystals down. We're going down together. Through Jean-Luc AYOUN. The Transformations. French transcript. Agape team. English translation. LMF.